Christian, I think a lot of B2B companies are actually measuring the wrong KPI when they try to optimize their own marketing and sales. And I want to use this episode to try and convince you, if I haven't already convinced you, because we made this switch 2 years ago. So you kind of know what we're going to talk about today.
I am completely convinced. But you guys watching this, listening to this, we hope that we can convince you because this is fundamental. But we see B2B companies doing this completely wrong, as we did for,
Yes.
what was that, 8 years, maybe?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So 8 years, and we've become smarter. So that's great, and we can now pass on those learnings. So what we're going to be talking about is what KPI you actually are going to use in order to measure the efficacy of your digital marketing based on your own lead generation. So the thing is, if I want to measure the impact or efficacy of Obsidian's marketing right now, I should not be doing that by looking at the number that I think most people would be looking at, which would be revenue. And revenue is kind of a shitty metric if you want to measure how your marketing and sales efforts are going right now. Why is that? Because it sounds kind of counterintuitive. Why would you not want to measure your marketing and sales efforts based on what revenue is coming in right now?
Yeah, so obviously we want revenue, we want new customers, but we see these as lagging indicators. We get customers or we get revenue because we've done something prior that leads these customers to become customers in our business. And this is the mistake most make because we should take a look from the helicopter perspective down and see where did this buyer journey start and where can we do even more. So what we're looking at now are some leading indicators, so leading these potential customers to become actual customers. And by looking at the leading indicators, and we will define it later on, we have the ability to be proactive instead of being reactive.
So just to give you a concrete example on how we're working with this, we've been using HubSpot as our sales CRM for a long time. So all of our sales and marketing efforts are happening inside HubSpot, and we're measuring it using HubSpot. And the thing is, I know from our statistics that when we create a new deal in Obsidian, on average, it takes 64 days for that deal to close. So if I create a deal today, it's going to be 64 days from now on before that eventually closes on average. And that means sometimes it's shorter, but sometimes it's also a lot longer. We have deals that have gone on for years. If it's very large deals, or if the company that we spoke with, maybe they changed contact persons all along, or something delayed the process, like stuff happens. So it just takes a long time. And that means that if I want to measure the efficacy of our marketing right now in this month, I can't really do that based on revenue, because the revenue we get this month really tells me how I did my marketing roughly 64 days ago, because that's when we actually created the deals that are now starting to close. So revenue to us is a very lagging indicator. Revenue is the sum of the efforts that we made 2 or 3 months ago. So what we're doing right now is what's going to impact our revenue 64 days ahead. So if revenue is the lagging indicator, which it is for all companies, like that's the ultimate lagging indicator, and also ultimate assessment of whether something worked or not. Like, did it eventually generate revenue? That's still the end goal. That's the ultimate lagging indicator. What could be an example of a leading indicator, and why is this leading instead?
So in Obsidian, we obviously do a lot of marketing, and one of the things we do is webinars, free webinars you can sign up for in order to watch something that we are teaching from our end. When seeing a webinar, you have the possibility to sign up for example, an audit. And when you do that, you actually have told us that you might be interested in seeing if there's a chance of collaborating. That would be a deal in our end that we create. So it's very important to see this. When we say a deal, it's not a closed deal. It's just like you as a potential customer confirm that there might be some interest. And then we have different stages that this lead goes through, from the journey from being created as a lead to ending up as a customer, hopefully. But a deal created or a lead created, that would be a leading indicator in our end.
Yeah, because we know, like, if we want to get revenue 2 months from now on, what do we then have to do? Okay, we have to hold some meetings with some client and send over some proposals. So proposals sent would actually also be a leading indicator. But proposals sent until close revenue one is maybe not that long time. That's maybe 14 days. So what happens before we actually send a proposal? We have to have a meeting. What happens before we actually have a meeting? We have to have an initial sales conversation. And that's when we in HubSpot and our HubSpot defines a deal. That's when we have an initial sales conversation, usually initiated by the client. So, Sinyo say, I want to sell you something. That's not a deal in our terminology because me wanting to sell you something doesn't mean you want to buy it. So you'd
Exactly.
actually have to express some purchase intent for us to actually create the deal in HubSpot. Because if I just want to sell something, I could create like 1,000 deals right now and close none of them. So that
Exactly.
wouldn't be that wouldn't be a very good indicator of anything happening
Mm.
in the short term. But if I have clients coming to me saying, I would like to buy something, then I have to do a pretty bad job as a salesperson in order to not close any of those leads in the next 64 days.
Yeah.
So you can also view it on a like a visualization like this, and I've used this as in our partner meetings. You'll probably recognize it. Like
Mm.
we have some assumed predictors of future success and definitive results of the past. And in our case, like the impact would be the revenue that is being generated or the proposals that are being accepted. But our input would be deals created. And we can even go like further back. Further back would be maybe amount of webinars held. Like that could also be a leading indicator. If we want more clients in 3 or 6 months from now, we're probably going to have to do more webinars now, or we're going to have to do more physical events, or we're going to have to do more Facebook advertising right now. But all of those ultimately lead, like those are different paths that ultimately lead onto a deal being created. So that's kind of how we chose to define lagging versus leading indicators in our business.
Yeah, and the definition is quite important. So you might already have gotten it, but there's also some positive and negative lagging and leading indicators. So just
Yes.
to give you guys an idea of this, and this can be different from company to company. So we just want to broaden your perspective. So looking at the lagging indicators, these are basically the results you can't change proactively. It's history. So the positive things are like sales, revenue, lifetime value, and so on. Where the negatives are metrics like churn. When you get a churn, it's quite difficult to do something about it now. But what you
Yeah.
could have done was looking at the leading indicators to this churn. So if we then now look at the leading indicators on the positive side, we have MQLs, marketing qualified leads, or deals opened, like we just told you we do in HubSpot. But the negatives could be a low net promoter score because we know that that is a leading indicator for the churn. So by shifting the whole perspective and looking at the leading indicators, you can actually be proactive and do something about
Yeah.
things.
And you mentioned the keyword there, which is being proactivity, because if you measure by revenue, you are by definition being reactive. Like if I don't have enough revenue this month, then this month I will start doing some new initiatives. But those initiatives won't work until 64 days from now. So just can't use that. So the issue with using lagging indicators is you're being reactive. So there's this time frame between you initiating something until it works, where your business is just some sub-performing. It's just not performing as well as it could be. So the big benefit is being able to be proactive. So I have a pretty good idea right now already based on our HubSpot deals and the sum that's being inserted into them. Like when you create a deal in our HubSpot, you have to also choose which channels are we talking about? Like there could be search engine optimization or Google ads or Meta ads. And we also have to give an estimate as to how much potential revenue do we think this deal might be able to give us. And we can use this information to create some weighted values for how much revenue are we going to get, like new monthly recurring revenue are we going to get in March right now based on the deals we have, the estimated time to close, the average time to close based on history, and the numbers we've actually entered. And these are not perfect numbers because, well, shit happens. Sometimes we lose the pitch. Sometimes we get a new pitch and it closes within 7 days because they had an urgent need. So they just needed to get started right away. And this will happen. But it's much better to do this than looking at revenue and being reactive. So while it's not perfect, it's better. But with that being said, like there are a few pitfalls when you're using leading indicators
Exa-
like this. What could
exactly.
an example be of
Yeah,
this?
because when you incentivize deals created, that is an amount, that's a number.
Yes.
You risk sub optimization here because suddenly you've created this incentive of just creating deals. So those deals that might not have been created prior to shifting your focus on leading indicators, like just a small deal of $300 that, well, it's fine, but that's not the thing that will move the needle all of a sudden. That would be created in there
Yeah.
in the HubSpot deal page. And that is why it's so important with the weighted averages you just mentioned, that we have to like put in what we expect. So one thing is looking at the amount of deals, the number of deals, but also the weighted average, because otherwise we could just create a lot of small deals and we would think, wow, in 2-3 months, 64 days, or what you said, things are going to look amazing. And then it's like
Yeah. Yeah, it
20
didn't
small
really matter.
clients.
Like, I've
Yeah.
actually seen this happen where when we started doing this and measuring based on deals created, all of a sudden, like, people forgot how we actually use HubSpot and started to create 4 separate deals for a single pitch because we had 4 verticals. And we've
Yeah.
always done one deal for this, but when we started to measure by amount of deals created, all of a sudden people didn't remember how we used to do it 2 weeks ago. So that's certainly true. Like, people can start to sub-optimize, like trying to basically pump the numbers and see if they can get the numbers up, because what gets measured gets done. I really believe in that, and we see that happening. And if the incentive is to create more deals, people will create more deals. But you can control that. Like, you can implement some sort of quality control, and you can implement someone actually looking into this and making sure that people don't start sub-optimizing. So while there are drawbacks and things you should be aware of, I still think this is a much superior way of looking at your marketing, because and this is the big thing, like, this does allow you to see how you're doing right now. So I know, like, if we want we have a set number of growth that we would like to have for this year. And we can take this growth and then divide it by the average revenue for a new client. And then we can divide that by the average amount of clients we get in a given year. And if we take that and subtract from the growth, I can then actually get a number that says, if I create this extra deals of clients per month, we should be able to hit our targets. I can then say, we know that we close an average of X percentage of our deals. So if I want to create this amount of clients, I need this amount of deals. And then I can just see, are we creating those deals or not? And if we're not, I know that it's right now that we need to do something. Then it becomes a question of, what would you actually want to do in order to increase the amount of deals you're creating? But that's a topic for another interesting episode, which we're going to do shortly, because last year we did create 1,924 deals in HubSpot. So we did this really well using inbound marketing, and we're more than happy to share how we actually did that.